Every summer you spend money on the same things. The citronella candles that burn for 4 hours and smell like industrial cleaning fluid. The spray cans of DEET that you feel vaguely uncomfortable putting on your skin and that your kids definitely don't want anywhere near them. The plug-in devices, the coils, the clip-on fans with the little repellent pads, the tiki torches, the thermacell units that need refills you can never find at the hardware store when you actually need them. And every single summer, despite all of that, you are still swatting mosquitoes off your arms at 7 in the evening when all you wanted was to sit outside with a drink and not think about anything. I did this for years, spent real money every season on things that worked partially, temporarily, in a small radius, under ideal wind conditions, and then stopped working the moment I moved 6 feet in any direction. And then I started gardening seriously, and I started learning about plant chemistry, and I found out that a specific group of perennials produces volatile organic compounds, the scientific term for the oils and aromatic molecules these plants release into the surrounding air, that interfere with the olfactory receptors mosquitoes use to locate their targets. Not as metaphor, not as folk wisdom, as documented peer-reviewed plant chemistry. These compounds don't just repel mosquitoes when you crush a leaf and rub it on your skin. Several of them release continuously into the air around the plant throughout the growing season, creating a chemical buffer in the immediate outdoor space that disrupts the mosquito's ability to find you in the first place. 13 plants. That's what this list is. Some of them you've heard of. Several of them are going to surprise you. And number 8 is the one I want you to hold in your mind right now, because it is a plant that almost no mainstream gardening channel has covered in this context. And the research behind why it works is the most specific and most convincing thing I've found in years of reading about plant-insect interactions. We'll get there. But first, tell me something real in the comments. Tell me what state you're in and what you've tried before for mosquito control, and whether it actually worked or whether you just convinced yourself it was working because you wanted it to. I ask because the gap between what people think is working and what the research says actually works is wide, and knowing where you're starting from helps me make this channel more useful for you every single week. Before the list, a clarification that matters. There is a difference between a plant that repels mosquitoes when you crush the leaves and apply them directly to your skin, which is true of many aromatic plants and is essentially just a topical repellent in plant form, and a plant that releases enough volatile compounds passively into the surrounding air to create meaningful repellent activity in the area around it. Both are real. They are not the same thing. The plants on this list were chosen because they do both, and where the evidence for ambient air repellency is strongest, I'll say so specifically. Where it's primarily a contact repellent, I'll say that too. I am not going to overstate what the research shows, because if I tell you a plant will give you a completely mosquito-free yard and it doesn't deliver that, you'll be right to be skeptical of everything else I say. What these 13 plants will do, planted strategically around seating areas and in the beds immediately adjacent to where you spend time outdoors, is meaningfully reduce mosquito pressure in ways that candles and sprays do not. Because they are always on, they don't run out, they don't wash off in the rain, and they get larger and more effective every season they grow. The first plant on this list is one where the gap between what most people know about it and what it actually does is larger than for almost any other aromatic perennial. Lavender angustifolia. English lavender is understood by most gardeners as a fragrance plant and a pollinator plant. What most gardening content doesn't explain is the specific chemistry behind why insects avoid it. The primary volatile compounds in lavender essential oil, linalool and linalyl acetate, have been studied in peer-reviewed entomological research as mosquito deterrents, and the findings are consistent. These compounds interfere with the mosquito's chemosensory system at the receptor level, disrupting the CO2 and lactic acid detection that mosquitoes use to locate human targets. A mature lavender plant releases these compounds continuously through its foliage during the growing season, not just when the flowers are present. The repellent activity is ambient, not contact only. Hardy in USDA zones 5 through 9 for most varieties, with Hidcote being the most cold-hardy English variety and Phenomenal being the most heat and humidity tolerant, specifically developed for American growing conditions in zones 5 through 9. Plant lavender in full sun with excellent drainage, lean soil, and essentially no fertilizer, because the essential oil concentration, which is directly related to repellent potency, actually increases when the plant is slightly nutrient-stressed. Rich soil produces soft, lush growth with diminished oil content. Your worst sunny, lean, well-drained spot is lavender's best spot, and that is the growing condition that maximizes the chemistry that makes it useful as a repellent. 3 to 5 plants grouped around a seeding area in full sun, with the plants close enough that you brush against them occasionally as you walk past. That is the placement that delivers the most consistent ambient repellent effect. The second plant on this list does something that lavender doesn't, and the difference is about what time of day the mosquito pressure is worst in your yard. If your problem is dawn and dusk mosquitoes, the aggressive feeders that hit hardest in the hour around sunrise and sunset, you want something with a stronger, more penetrating volatile release than lavender delivers. Rosmarinus officinalis, rosemary, produces camphor, alpha-pinene, and borneol in its volatile oil profile, compounds that have demonstrated mosquito repellent activity in research published in journals, including the Journal of Vector Ecology. The camphor content specifically is higher than in most other kitchen herbs and produces a sharper, more persistent volatile release that carries further in still air. Hardy outdoors year-round in zones 7 through 11. In zones 5 and 6, grow it in a container and move it to a protected location before the first hard freeze. A cold garage or unheated sunroom is sufficient, and the plant goes semi-dormant and waits with almost no care requirement through winter. The container advantage here is practical and specific. You can move rosemary to exactly where you're sitting. On an evening when mosquitoes are active, set a large container of rosemary immediately adjacent to your seating area, brush the foliage as you walk past, and the oil release is immediate and significant. Rosemary also does something none of the other plants on this list do. You can cook with it. The same plant that is managing mosquito pressure in your outdoor space is a functional kitchen herb with real culinary value. That dual utility makes the garden space it occupies justify itself in 2 completely different ways simultaneously. The third plant is one that most people in this conversation will have heard of, but almost certainly not in this context. And the reason it belongs on a mosquito repellent list rather than just a culinary herb list has to do with a specific compound that most gardening content never mentions. Oxymum basilicum, basil, contains estragol and eugenol in its volatile oil profile, and eugenol specifically has been studied for mosquito repellent activity with results that are strong enough to appear in applied entomology research. The caveat is important. Basil is technically an annual, not a perennial, in most American growing zones. It is on this list for a specific reason. In zones 9 through 11, it grows as a perennial. In all other zones, it is worth growing as a companion plant in containers near seating areas specifically because the volatile release from a large, well-established basil plant in warm weather is among the strongest of any kitchen herb. And because basil planted near other perennials, on this list, creates a layered volatile chemical environment in the surrounding air that is more effective than any single plant alone. Plant lemon basil or Thai basil for the highest volatile oil concentration. Both produce more eugenol than sweet basil varieties. Keep the plant from flowering by pinching the flower heads as they emerge, because once basil flowers, it shifts its metabolic energy from leaf and oil production to seed production, and the repellent potency drops significantly with that shift. The fourth plant shifts the list into true perennial territory and into a different chemical family entirely. Agastache funiculum, anise hyssop, produces methyl chavicol as its primary volatile compound, an aromatic oil with a strong anise-phenyl character that mosquitoes find significantly aversive in research that has examined plant volatile profiles and mosquito avoidance behavior. Blue Fortune is the cultivar with the best documented garden performance. Sterile, so it puts all its energy into flower production rather than seeding, which means a longer bloom season and more volatile release across more of the summer. Hardy in USDA zones 4 through 9. Grows 18 to 36 inches tall with upright lavender blue flower spikes from midsummer through September. Here is what most lists that include Agastache skip. It is one of the highest value late-season pollinator plants available to American gardeners, meaning you are simultaneously reducing mosquito pressure and increasing beneficial insect activity in the same planting decision. Bees work those flower spikes constantly. Hummingbirds visit. The dual effect, repelling the insects you don't want and attracting the ones that make your garden more productive, is a combination that is genuinely rare. Plant in full sun, well-drained average soil, and cut back to the crown after frost. It returns reliably every spring with more vigor than the season before. Number 5 is the plant that most people on this list will already have growing somewhere in their yard, used for an entirely different purpose, and which they have probably never thought of in this context. Mentha, mint, specifically peppermint, Mentha X piperita, contains menthol and menthone in concentrations that produce one of the strongest mosquito-repellent volatile profiles of any common garden plant, with documented efficacy in peer-reviewed research that compares favorably to some synthetic repellents at close range. The ambient air effect from a large established mint planting is real and meaningful. The problem with mint in open ground is also real and documented in detail in our earlier conversations. It spreads by rhizome aggressively and will colonize beds, lawns, and neighboring property if planted in open soil. The solution for mosquito repellent purposes is specific and practical. Grow peppermint in large containers, 5 to 7 gallons minimum, positioned directly in your seeding area and on pathways leading to it. The container eliminates the spread problem entirely. In this application, the thing that makes mint difficult in open beds, its vigorous growth and dense foliage, is exactly what you want, because more leaf surface area means more volatile oil production, means more repellent activity in the surrounding air. Hardy in zones 3 through 9. Harvest stems regularly. This stimulates new growth and keeps the oil concentration high. A large peppermint container near where you sit in the evening is one of the most effective single-plant interventions for mosquito pressure that you can make, and it costs almost nothing after the initial planting. Number 6 is one where I want to separate carefully what the evidence actually shows from what informal gardening sources have overstated, because the overstatement has led to disappointment that unfairly damaged the plant's reputation. Pelargonium citrosum, the plant sold as citrosa or mosquito plant in garden centers with strong citrus lemon fragrance when touched, does contain citronellol and geraniol, compounds present in citronella grass that are documented mosquito repellents. What the marketing around this plant has overstated is the ambient air repellency. The honest research position is that Pelargonium citrosum releases its volatile compounds most strongly when the foliage is disturbed or crushed, not continuously into the surrounding air at the levels that citronella-based commercial repellents achieve. As a contact repellent, crush a few leaves, rub them on exposed skin, it works. As an ambient air repellent at the level of sitting 3 feet away and receiving passive protection, the evidence is weaker than for lavender or peppermint. Hardy outdoors year-round only in zones 9 through 11. In all other zones, grow it in a container and bring it inside before frost. The correct use of this plant for mosquito purposes is to place it where you will physically brush against it regularly and to occasionally crush a small number of leaves and rub the oil on your skin during high mosquito periods. Used that way, it delivers real value. Planted in a bed 6 feet from where you sit and ignored, it under-delivers on the promise that its marketing created. I want to stop here and be direct about something. This channel puts out content at this level, specific, research-grounded, honest about what the evidence does and doesn't show, every single week. If you've been watching and you're not subscribed, here is the practical reality. I'm building a follow-up video right now on companion planting combinations that create layered volatile chemical environments around vegetable gardens, specifically for aphid control and whitefly management. That is research-intensive content that will not be easy to find elsewhere. Subscribe now and turn the bell on. YouTube does not reliably surface new videos to people who watch but don't subscribe, and I don't want that video to miss you. Number 7 is for gardeners who have shaded seating areas, a covered porch, a patio under a tree canopy, a screened pergola with partial sun, where most sun-loving aromatic herbs won't perform. Monarda didyma, bee balm, handles partial shade better than any other aromatic perennial on this list, produces volatile thymol and carvacrol compounds in its foliage that have documented insect repellent properties, and it does this while producing the most dramatic flowers of any plant in this category. Tall, spiky, tubular blooms in blazing red, deep pink, rich purple, and white that hummingbirds visit with an intensity that makes your garden visibly alive from across the yard. Hardy in zones 3 through 9. Choose mildew-resistant cultivars. Jacob Klein for deep red, raspberry wine for rich pink. Because older varieties have significant powdery mildew issues in humid climates that undermine both the appearance and the oil production. The leaves are in the mint family and brew into a tea with a bergamot character strikingly similar to Earl Grey. You are managing mosquito pressure, attracting hummingbirds and butterflies, and growing a functional kitchen herb in partial shade from a single plant. That combination is not easy to match elsewhere on this list or anywhere in the herb garden category. Number 8. Here it is. The one I told you at the beginning, almost no mainstream gardening channel has covered in this specific context. Chrysanthemum cinerariifolium. Pyrethrum, also called the Dalmatian chrysanthemum, is the plant from which pyrethrin is derived. Pyrethrin is one of the most widely used insecticides in the world, found in commercial mosquito sprays, household bug killers, pet flea treatments, and agricultural applications across dozens of countries. It is the active compound in products you have almost certainly used or seen advertised. And it comes from a plant you can grow in your garden. The natural pyrethrin produced in the flower heads of Chrysanthemum cinerariifolium, concentrated in the dried flowers, which is why the flowers were historically dried and crushed into powder, is a contact insecticide that affects the nervous system of insects on exposure. As a garden plant, the ambient repellency comes primarily from the volatile compounds released by the foliage and flowers during the growing season, which create a chemical signal that mosquitoes and other flying insects find aversive at close range. Hardy in USDA zones 3 through 7, preferring cool summers and well-drained soil, which means it performs best in the northern half of the country, New England, the upper Midwest, the Pacific Northwest, elevated areas of the mountain states. In zones 8 and 9, it struggles with summer heat and is better treated as a cool season annual or grown in a location with afternoon shade. Full sun in cooler zones. Excellent drainage is non-negotiable. It evolved on rocky Dalmatian coastal hillsides and will rot in waterlogged soil faster than almost anything else on this list. White daisy-like flowers with yellow centers from late spring through early summer. The dried flowers can be made into a basic insect repellent powder by grinding them, though the concentration in a home-dried product is far lower than commercial preparations. What you are primarily getting from this plant in a garden context is ambient volatile deterrents in the immediate vicinity of the planting, plus the visual benefit of an attractive daisy form flower, plus the ecological value of a species that supports beneficial insects. The reason most gardening channels haven't covered this plant in the mosquito context is that it's less well known in American horticulture than its European and Asian counterparts, and its zone performance is more regionally limited than lavender or catmint. But if you're gardening in zones 3 through 7 and you want the plant with the most direct chemical connection to documented insect repellency, this is it. I want to know if any of you have grown pyrethrum before. Drop it in the comments and tell me what zone you're in and how it performed, because the performance data from home gardeners across different American climates is genuinely useful information that I don't have enough of. Number 9 returns to the sun-loving aromatic category with a plant that most people grow for cooking and have never thought of as an insect management tool. Thymus vulgaris, garden thyme, contains thymol and carvacrol as its primary volatile compounds, the same compounds that appear in commercial insect repellent formulations and that have been studied specifically for mosquito deterrent activity in peer-reviewed research. The thymol content in garden thyme is among the highest of any commonly grown kitchen herb. It grows as a low-spreading ground cover 4 to 12 inches tall, depending on variety. Handles poor dry soil and full sun with almost no maintenance, and once established, is one of the most drought-tolerant plants you can grow in a sunny bed. Hardy, in zones 4 through 9. Plant it along pathway edges and between stepping stones where foot traffic bruises the foliage. and releases the volatile oils directly into the air at ankle and knee height. The zone where mosquito activity is most concentrated when you're seated outdoors. Silver Queen for silver-edged foliage that looks attractive even when not in bloom. Lemon Thyme for a citrus-forward volatile profile that layers effectively with lavender or rosemary in a mixed repellent planting. The cumulative volatile release from a pathway edged with thyme, lavender, and catmint in full sun creates an aromatic chemical environment that is meaningfully different from a pathway with no aromatic plants. And the maintenance requirement for all three together is minimal once established. Number 10 is for the gardener who wants the most dramatic visual impact from this list combined with genuine repellent function. Salvia officinalis culinary sage produces camphor, borneol, and thujone in its volatile oil profile, with camphor being the most studied compound for insect deterrent activity. It grows as a semi-woody subshrub 18 to 30 inches tall, with soft gray-green aromatic leaves and blue-purple flower spikes in early summer that are genuinely ornamental, hardy in zones 4 through 8. The visual argument for sage in a mosquito-repellent garden design is that it provides structure, year-round interest in mild climates where the foliage persists through winter, and a silver-gray color that contrasts beautifully with the green and purple tones of lavender, catmint, and agastache. It is also, like rosemary, a dual-purpose plant with real culinary utility. A large established sage plant in a sunny border near your patio is managing volatile chemistry in the surrounding air and available for harvest every time you cook something that benefits from it. Burr Garden is the cultivar with the largest leaves and highest oil concentration, making it the most effective choice for both culinary and ambient repellent purposes. Number 11 is a grass, and its inclusion on a mosquito repellent list is something I want to explain carefully because most American gardeners know it from a different context. Cymbopogon nardus, citronella grass, not the pelargonium plant sold as mosquito plant in garden centers, but actual citronella grass, is the source of the citronellal, citronellol, and geraniol compounds present in commercial citronella candles and sprays. The commercially processed essential oil from this grass is a documented mosquito repellent at concentrations that the plant itself does not continuously release into the surrounding air at equivalent levels. The honest position: citronella grass in your garden provides a meaningful volatile release when the foliage is disturbed, a lesser ambient effect in still air without disturbance, and the best results when combined with other aromatic plants rather than relied on alone. Hardy outdoors only in zones 10 and 11. In zones 7 through 9, grow it in a container and bring it inside before frost. It grows vigorously in a large container through summer and can reach 3 to 5 feet tall in a single season, making it visually impactful in a patio container arrangement. In zones 3 through 6, treat it as a seasonal annual, planting fresh each spring. Place it in containers that you can position immediately adjacent to seating, where foot traffic and normal movement will brush the foliage and trigger volatile release repeatedly throughout an outdoor evening. Number 12 is one that genuinely surprised me when I first encountered the research, because the plant has a strong culinary identity and almost no public profile as an insect repellent. Allium sativum, garlic, produces allicin and diallyl disulfide when the tissue is damaged, compounds that have demonstrated repellent and insecticidal activity in agricultural research contexts. In a garden setting, garlic releases sulfur compounds from its foliage and soil-level activity throughout the growing season that aphids, whiteflies, and certain flying insects, including mosquitoes, find aversive. The application here is specific. Garlic planted as a border around a seating area, in raised beds adjacent to a patio, or in containers near outdoor furniture, creates a low-level chemical barrier in the soil and lower air layer that contributes to the overall volatile environment of the space. Technically a perennial bulb that is typically grown as an annual, but in zones 5 through 9 it naturalizes from bulbils and returns year after year in the same spot if a percentage of the bulbs are left in the ground after harvest. Hardneck varieties, chestnut red, German red, rocambole types, are the best performers for zones 4 through 7. Softneck varieties, California early, silver skin, for zones 7 through 9. The dual utility here is even more pronounced than with rosemary or thyme. Every garlic plant in your mosquito management border is also producing food, and the harvest window in midsummer gives you both fresh garlic scapes in early summer and cured bulbs by July. Number 13 closes the list with a plant that operates differently from every other plant here, because its repellent effect works not through volatile chemistry in the air around it, but through its impact on the mosquito breeding cycle at the soil level. Tagetes, marigold, specifically Tagetes minuta or Tagetes erecta rather than the French dwarf varieties, produces alpha-terphenol from its roots, a compound that is toxic to mosquito larvae in soil-level water and has been studied specifically in the context of natural mosquito breeding site management. Planting marigolds around areas where moisture collects, the edges of garden beds that stay damp, the periphery of rain gardens, low spots near downspouts, introduces root exudates into the immediate soil environment that interfere with larval development in standing water near the planting. This is a mechanism that is distinct from airborne repellency and that addresses the source of the mosquito population rather than just the adult insects. Technically treated as an annual in most American zones, but Tagetes minuta self-seeds so reliably that once established, it perpetuates itself year after year without replanting, effectively functioning as a perennial in the garden. Full sun, well-drained to average soil, hardy enough in zones 8 through 11 to overwinter as a perennial. The volatile chemistry from marigold foliage also has documented aphid and whitefly deterrent effects, making this plant useful in a vegetable garden border as well as a mosquito management context. Here is how to think about these 13 plants as a system rather than a list, because planting one of them in a single corner of your yard will give you noticeable but limited results. And planting them strategically around and within your outdoor living space will give you something qualitatively different. The highest impact placement strategy is concentric. The inner ring, the plants closest to where you sit, should be the strongest contact repellents that you will regularly disturb. Peppermint in containers, thyme as pathway edging, sage and rosemary in pots you can brush as you move through the space. The middle ring, 2 to 4 feet from seeding, should be the ambient volatile producers. Lavender in full sun, agastache for late summer coverage, bee balm for partial shade, citronella grass in large containers. The outer ring, the wider bed space and border planting, is where pyrethrum, garlic, marigolds, and pelargonium work best, creating a broader chemical environment and addressing breeding site management at the perimeter. That 3-ring approach is not complicated to install, and the plants in each ring are all low-maintenance perennials or near perennials that get stronger and more effective every season. 2 things the research consistently shows about plant-based mosquito management that commercial products don't have financial incentive to publicize. The first, combination plantings outperform single-species plantings at equivalent densities. The volatile compounds from different aromatic plants address different sensory pathways in the mosquito's detection system, and a layered chemical environment that hits multiple pathways simultaneously is more disruptive to the mosquito's host-finding behavior than a single compound at higher concentration. This is why a patio surrounded by lavender, rosemary, thyme, and agastache outperforms a patio with 4 times as much lavender alone. The second, most plant-based repellent effects are range-limited. The meaningful ambient protection radius for even the strongest volatile producers on this list is roughly 6 to 10 feet under still air conditions and narrows significantly in any wind. This means that plants placed at the edge of a large yard provide almost no protection to people sitting at the center. Placement adjacent to seating within 3 to 6 feet is not a preference. It's the functional requirement for the chemistry to reach the people it's supposed to protect. This channel has been building toward a video on complete garden design for outdoor living spaces, not just plant selection, but layout, pathway placement, and the specific combination plantings that work together rather than just alongside each other. If that's something you'd use, subscribe now and hit the bell, because that video is in production and I want it to reach you when it's ready. And I want you to tell me something specific before you close this. Tell me what your outdoor space looks like right now. Patio, porch, backyard, balcony, whatever it is. And tell me what zone you're in and what the mosquito situation is like there on a typical summer evening. Not a general rating, a real description. because those details tell me whether the next video I make about this is hitting the right problems or missing them entirely. Drop it below. Now go plant something that works while you're not watching it.